Hi everyone, it's Molly here to talk to you about teaching strategies. Let's jump right in. First, we're going to look at what is a prompt. A prompt is something a teacher does to help a learner perform a skill. There are different types of prompts. First, there's a verbal prompt, which could be direct, like just saying come here, or indirect, saying what do we need? Partial verbal, which would be like saying kuh when prompting cookie. A physical, which could be hand over hand or putting your hand on a learner's back with gentle pressure. There's a partial physical, which could be a light touch on a learner's arm or back. Generally, these happen from the wrist back. A gestural, pointing to an area or an item, tilting your head in a direction, or touching an item. Modeling, performing the act, saying a word, constructing the item, or manipulating the material. And finally, augmented stimuli. This could be brighter or larger visuals, exaggerated textiles such as sand over a letter, louder or more distinct auditory input, lines on a paper, dotted lines for writing letters, exaggerated aspects of a cue, or overlapping visual cues. Let's look at prompts versus natural cues. Like we talked about earlier, a prompt are tools teachers temporarily use to help learners perform a skill. Whereas a natural cue is external or internal qualities that are or should be dependably associated with a behavior. Let's think about hand washing. So a prompt for hand washing would be being told to go wash your hands, whereas the natural cue would be that your hands are dirty. Before you start a lesson, determine which types of prompts you're going to use so that the learner can ultimately learn to respond to the natural cues. Next, we're going to look at selecting the single most effective prompt. So first you want to select a prompt that works. You don't want to model and then gesture and then physically prompt. A prompt is only successful if it leads to the desired outcome. Next, use prompts that are as close to the natural cue as possible. The goal of the lesson is to transfer the control from the prompt to the natural cues. Model or demonstrate when possible so the learner knows exactly what, when, and how to do it. Think about the prerequisite skill of being able to imitate a model. There are 3 types of modeling prompts: body action, selection of objects like picking something up, or actions with objects like pushing a button or writing. For fine, visual, oral, or tactile discrimination, embed the prompts directly within the stimulus to draw the learner's attention to this distinction. So, for example, for spoken discrimination between stop versus step, you could elongate the vowel. So, stop versus step. And use prompts that will be clear and easier to fade. Go from least to most intrusive. Next, we're going to talk about eliminating prompts. Remember, if you put it in, you need a plan to take it out. First, let's look at fading verbal prompts. You can adjust the volume or number of words, like go to the door, go to the, go to, or reduce a portion of a word, going from chocolate to chalk to ch. For fading physical prompts, they can be reduced over a series of trial. Gradually decrease the force that is exerted first, then use less physical assistance. It may involve where the physical contact is made versus hand over hand or a wrist to an arm. For fading gestural prompts, increase the distance between your fingertip and the object. Over time, reduce the degree that your finger or hand is extended. Be cautious of exaggerated motions with gestural prompts. They need to be faded as well. When fading model prompts, demonstrate fewer and fewer aspects of the full action. Clapping many times could go to clapping once, and then begin to clap but make no contact with your hand. When fading augmented prompts, diminish the number of something on the paper or decrease the intensity of the color or the size. Next, we're going to look at prompting hierarchies. We're going to start with least to most. These are great for when a learner does some of the steps in a sequential task. Before using the strategy, decide the types of prompts you want to use, the order you will present the prompts, and how long you wait before the prompt. So what does this look like? If you tell a student to stand up, pause for 5 seconds. Then you gesturally prompt and wait 5 more seconds. Then model the action. Then wait 5 more seconds. Then physically prompt. Some of the challenges with using least to most is deciding when the learner needs more time to do something versus when they're waiting for you to prompt them. This may lead to a stop and go pattern throughout the task. We're also going to look at most to least. This is great for when a learner does not complete an aspect of a sequential task. Initially, provide as much help as necessary, then reduce the number and intrusiveness of the prompts. What this looks like. Think about teaching a student to load the dishwasher. First, we would fully physically prompt, then over trials, reduce to a partial physical, and then gesture the items that need to be loaded into the dishwasher. Remember that physical prompts should always be provided from behind. This is similar to fading, but in fading we reduce the level of a single prompt, while most to least we reduce the assistance of using different prompts. Some challenges with both prompting hierarchies. Changing from one type of prompt to another. You still have to remove the new prompt in addition to the old prompt. Try and pick a single prompt and try various strategies to remove that single prompt before moving to a different type of prompt. Next, we're going to look at delayed prompting. That's inserting a time interval between the prompt and the cue. First, let's look at a consistent time delay. A fixed interval time is always used, so think you're always going to use 4 seconds. So what it looks like, if a teacher says red, they wait 4 seconds and then points to the red candy. Students cannot fail this lesson. They either respond to the spoken word or to the prompt. The other type of delayed prompting is a progressive time delay. This is presenting the prompt and the cue at the same time, then over a series of trials, gradually increasing the delay between presenting the cue and presenting the prompt. Let's think about a student who is shown a picture of a spoon and can immediately get the spoon. But when a teacher says spoon, they do nothing. The teacher then begins by saying spoon while showing the picture of the spoon. Next, the teacher introduces a half-second delay between the spoken word and showing the picture, then increases the delay interval. We use this when we teach Phase 5 in PECS, teaching the students to answer the question, what do you want? Everyone's favorite, prompt dependency. Dependency occurs when a prompt has been added to a lesson but has not been effectively removed. Keep in mind that this is not the student's fault. They're not the ones adding the prompts. The best ways to avoid. Use one prompt and remove it as soon as possible. Reduce prompt dependency by never using the same prompt twice. So if you're physically prompting a student, the first trial, fully hand over hand. The next trial, reduce it a little bit, move up the arm to the wrist. Next, let's look at how to teach sequential lessons. First, we're going to look at whole or partial tasks. A whole task is presenting the whole task at once. Think hand washing. A partial task is teaching part of a task. Concentrate on the most difficult aspect of the task. Think about loading clothes into a washing machine. If a student has difficulty physically putting the clothes in, you could practice that part, wherein you don't have to run the entire washing machine. We also want to look at forward or backwards chaining. In forward chaining, the first steps are independent, with full support coming in for the remaining step. For hand washing, we could do this. The student is able to go to the sink, turn on the water, and wet their hands, but they need prompting to finish the rest of the sequence. We can also look at backwards chaining. This is when the support is given from the beginning in the sequence while the last steps are independent. Backwards chaining is effective for tasks where there are very powerful natural consequences. Think about putting on your sneakers. Eventually, once you tie your shoes, you're going to be able to go outside and run. Thank you guys so much for listening to this presentation on teaching strategies. Please let me know if you have any questions.